Welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, this is the third and final installment of the Restore podcast here on the Prehospital Care Podcast. So in this episode, I interview Ani Naqvi, who is both a transformational executive coach and indeed mentor who has led a truly remarkable life, actually. So she survived the 2004 tsunami and also survived stage 4 cancer. Both experiences have fundamentally shaped the way she sees life. And in this episode, she really reflects on her experiences, both battling cancer, surviving the tsunami, but also turning things around to sort of thrive instead of survive through adversity. So the general theme through the Restore podcast is really about thriving through adversity. So I really hope you find this episode helpful and indeed inspirational, because it's a truly remarkable story from Ani. Please also head over to the Restore podcast, where we're publishing more of these episodes on truly inspiring characters, actually, and individuals doing amazing things. So please do head over to the Restore podcast to both rate, review, and indeed subscribe to the content there. Finally, just to say, we're going to have a Prehospital Care podcast question time shortly with the hosts, so please do feel free to email us in your questions at prehospitalcarepodcast@hotmail.com. That's prehospitalcarepodcast@hotmail.com. The email can be found in the show notes of this episode, and indeed last week's and the week before's. So please do feel free to email us in your questions, and we'll strive to answer them best we can. Okay, please do enjoy this episode. There'll be no more of these episodes indeed on the Prehospital Care Podcast. If you do enjoy them, please feel free to head over to the Restore podcast. Many thanks. Welcome back to the Restore podcast with me, Owen Walker. In this episode, I'm speaking with Ani Naqvi around tsunamis to cancer survival, and indeed the psychological resilience to survive and indeed thrive in these environments. So Ani is an executive transformational expert and indeed mentor who guides leaders towards productivity, self-care, and finding purpose. Her remarkable experiences include surviving the 2004 tsunami, having shaped her holistic approach to personal and professional growth. So Annie's remarkable personal experiences of battling cancer, surviving a tsunami, compared and indeed contrasted with her expertise in executive transformational coaching, offer a unique perspective on finding purpose, cultivating resilience, and fostering mental fitness. Annie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Owen. Lovely to meet you.
Annie, I wonder if we could just start with your upcoming memoir, The Way That Changed My Life, The Tsunami to Survivor. And so this memoir really sort of delves into your harrowing experience of the 2004 tsunami and indeed other near-death encounters. I guess my first question, Annie, really is around how did these pivotal moments shift your perspective on life and indeed purpose?
It's a great question, Owen. And it was really pivotal for me because I had been suffering from bouts of depression and anxiety and a sense of disconnection, a sense of what are we here for, the kind of existential kind of crisis I was going through at the time. And I was thinking, is that all there is to life? Be born, go to school, go to college, get an education, get a job, get married, have a couple of kids, retire, and then die. And that kind of the way that I've described it sounds quite bleak to me. And those are the kind of questions I had at that time in my life. And I was thinking there has to be more to life than just that. And so when I was in the tsunami, like I said, I suffered from periods of depression and anxiety. And one of the main things that I noticed during the tsunami was that whilst I was drowning, which would have been a really easy way out of, because when you're depressed, you sometimes don't really want to be here. And I felt like that on more than one occasion. And what I noticed is that I did want to be here, that my survivor instinct was so strong. And I remember this voice when I was in the hut saying to me, remember this moment, Annie, you do not want to die. And I fought like tooth and nail to stay alive. And when the tsunami was over and I was on the Oprah Winfrey show, I told her that I knew that I must have been saved for a purpose, because I believe that when the spirit has come here to do what it's meant to do, then it passes on to the next dimension. And I said to her, I don't know what that purpose is now, but I know that it will become clear as time goes on. And I said, and we owe it to the people that didn't make it to make the most of our lives and make it mean something, because we were saved when so many others were not. And it started off as survivor guilt. Yeah, this kind of guilt of, why did I survive when so many others died? I'm depressed, I'm single, I'm not married, I don't have kids. And I knew people that had lost loved ones. And so that sense of responsibility and that sense of survival guilt kind of made me feel like, come on, Annie, we've got to do something more with our life. If you didn't die in that tsunami, then there's a reason why you were saved, and we need to figure out what that reason is. Now, of course, I had PTSD for a long period of time after that, and it took some time to it took a long time, actually. It took 10 years to then discover what that true purpose was. But what it did mean is that, a few years later, I ended up in Iraq during the war, and I was working for an NGO delivering projects and programs to the people that were being displaced by the war. I then came back to the UK and worked for the UK's largest charity, Cancer Research UK, as their head of projects, as a C-suite level senior leader kind of in their company as well. And but then I got my own diagnosis. So then I was like, okay, well, then this isn't it either. This is not your purpose, because I believe when you're on the right path, that life is kind of happens a bit more easily for you, right? And I did feel like I kept getting the same message from the universe, or whatever you want to call it, to take note of some things. And I obviously, what resists persists. And I was obviously resisting whatever it was the message was. And so when my cancer diagnosis came along, it was an opportunity for me to really sort of take stock and to pause. I left working at that time, and I spent the next sort of 4 or 5 years working on my mind, my body, and my spirit in order to heal myself as holistically as possible. Because I was still quite young, only in my 30s, I thought to myself, getting a cancer diagnosis when you're that young, I know it's happening more and more these days, but personally, I thought to myself, having a cancer diagnosis that young means there's something not quite right in the mind, body, spirit kind of, sphere, basically. So I decided to look at all of those different areas to heal, not just the physical, but also the mental and the emotional. And, maybe the tsunami has something to do with it as well. I'm pretty sure it probably stemmed mostly from my childhood and other experiences that I'd had. But that's kind of what happened. And when I came out of that 5 year kind of cancer journey, I had done a lot of qualifications, because whatever I was doing holistically to heal myself, I really didn't want to do chemo. Chemo seemed very counterintuitive to me. I just thought, do you know what? I don't really feel ill. They're telling me that I'm ill, but I don't feel ill. And I know that chemo is going to make me feel ill. And so I said, I want to try whatever I can without doing chemo. I also stalled surgery for a few years as well, but I did do some hormone treatment and things like that. And then I was doing a lot of holistic therapies and traveling around the world, and whatever I was doing holistically, I wanted to become certified in. Not necessarily to be a yoga teacher or these kind of things at the time, but for my own healing. So I sort of did qualifications and accreditations in yoga teaching, yoga therapy, mindfulness, meditation, Ayurveda, hypnotherapy, NLP, EFT, Reiki. I mean, you name it, I did it, kind of thing. And so it was mostly all to sort of heal myself at that time. And then, of course, at the end of that journey, which was also a stage 4 journey with a number of recurrences, I was kind of thinking, well, what do I do now? And it had just again happened organically, in the sense that people had started to gravitate to me for advice and support. They knew my story. I had managed to heal myself from stage 4 cancer without doing chemo. I'm now 10 years in remission still as well. And they knew that story, and I was supporting people like that. And then one of the people said that the conversations that they were having with me were more helpful than their qualified therapist. And I thought, well, of course, Annie, you've been through all of these things. You always had an interest in psychology, and you've had to go through all of this and change your entire life. It makes sense that you would then support other people with their challenges. And that's how I made my way into the coaching field. Therapy didn't ever feel that great to me because I don't see the point of going back and I spent a year in therapy one year. It was the most depressed I'd ever been, just spending all that time hanging around in the past. It wasn't for me. That mindfulness and meditation, kind of living in the present moment, whilst understanding what's happened in the past, really resonated with me. So that's where I that's where I found my purpose. And so the tsunami was actually the catalyst for me finding my purpose.
Listen, that's powerful for a number of reasons, Annie, because 230,000 people died in that tsunami. There's it's more than an atomic bomb would kill, and it was not to, and that's a fundamental experience in and of itself, like you said, and the outflow of that is, you're right, PTSD, which actually I think anyone would experience surviving such an fundamental and difficult experience. But then, like you said, a 5-year cancer journey as well on top of that. Now, not everyone, not hardly anyone experiences almost two fundamental near-death experiences in such a short space of time. And I think what I'm getting from you, Annie, is that why not use these experiences to your advantage? Why not harness the learning from these experiences to benefit other people? And I think that's fantastic, because this podcast is all about thriving through adversity and how you navigate adversity and come out the other side with almost this post-traumatic growth, really. And having these traumatic experiences, but learning and benefiting from them. Could you maybe speak to the resilience you do in your work, the resilience work you do with clients, and just sort of what lessons through cultivating resilience in the face of adversity that you confer to others within your coaching and leadership work?
Yeah, absolutely. I genuinely believe that it was every single experience that I've had today, all of my near-death experiences, the tsunami, the cancer, the two recurrences, the stage 4, that have made me who I am today. And in the past, maybe I was angry against some of those things. And yeah, I was angry with the universe. Like, why me? Why does this all, why all of these things happen to me? But obviously, I've come through that now. And some of the things that I kind of really believe are life is happening for you, not to you. Believe that we actually choose our journey. And I think that if you have chosen a very challenging journey, I like the feeling of choice. There's a couple of books that I've read that kind of indicate those sort of things. Many Lives, Many Masters being one of them. But I like the thing about thinking that it was a choice that you made, because it means that your soul's obviously decided to go on quite a on a big kind of transformational journey. And if I'd have just been born and had a very easy life and got on a 9 to 5 job and everything was dandy, I wouldn't have had the sort of growth that I've had. And, for me, that is a really important thing to take away. I do believe that adversity, every challenge is an opportunity for growth, and that adversity does build resilience as well. And I know it can feel like you are drowning at times. There have been many times where I've been feeling like I've been drowning, not just in the tsunami. But if you manage to pull yourself through those periods of time, they can, as you say, you can be that enormous post-traumatic growth that you can have as a result. And it's a testament to who you are, your strength, your resilience, your character, in how you can, everybody has challenging things that happen to them. And it's not the challenging things, we can't necessarily control the exterior, but we can control how we respond to it. We can control how we choose to react to it and what we choose to take away from it. You said earlier something which really resonated with me, which is thought to myself, you know what, this is a really great way of turning all that darkness that I had to go through into a beaming light and guide for other people that are going through their difficult periods. And obviously, not all of my clients are going through very challenging times necessarily, but you can apply these lessons to even the smallest of things. Yeah. So, children, maybe their children have got learning difficulties, or, they've got a challenging boss at work, or, there's been so many recessions as well in the past few years of layoffs and job insecurity, all sorts of things that, people split up all the time. So you can really apply these lessons. And as you said earlier before we were talking, I have walked in those shoes. I have been through most of the experiences that anyone would go through. I've experienced loss, I've experienced trauma, I've experienced tragedy, I've experienced, health diagnoses, I've experienced real existential life crises of not knowing whether or not, 10 years ago, I didn't know I would be still alive, right? So the fact that I'm even sitting here in front of you now, and not just alive, but thriving, living my best life that I've ever lived in before, experience peace, joy, harmony, contentment, 80% of the time, if not more, and only, being hijacked by my saboteurs a small percentage of the time. So as I said, I don't think I would be doing this with you right now if I hadn't have been through those experiences. I wouldn't be sharing my knowledge, the lessons that I learned with the audience if I hadn't have gone through all of those things. So I am actually incredibly grateful to life for giving me all of these opportunities to grow. Now, of course, you're not thinking that at the time that you're in the middle of a cancer diagnosis or that you're in the middle of a tsunami. You're not going, oh my God, I'm so grateful for this. I'm going to learn so much. But, with the benefit of hindsight, you can do that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, Annie. And, and not only do you live this through your coaching, which I fundamentally agree with, you're bringing this out in day-to-day and hour-to-hour meetings with leaders, but you've also written it in your memoirs, and some of the most powerful reflections feature in your memoirs. Could you maybe, just for listeners and indeed viewers, just notion towards some of the key takeaways from your upcoming memoir, The Way That Changed My Life, Tsunami to Survivor, just so that others can be sort of aware what indeed what the book involves and some of the key takeaways.
So the book starts in 2004, just before I'm about to go on holiday to Sri Lanka for Christmas in 2004, and then obviously chronicles the unfolding events that happened over the course of those next few days, and not just the next few days, but over the next few years until more or less until the kind of present moment, really, from a few months or a year ago or something. And really kind of like dives a lot more deeper into, the whole story of the tsunami, plus the sort of subsequent kind of cancer diagnosis and challenges that I had, as well as meeting my husband. So there is some lightness in there, and some lovely warm stuff as well. And it's not a depressing book. Yeah, it's all about the it's all about inspiring other people to know, to sort of say, look, if I've been through all of these challenges and I've survived all of these things, and it was really difficult at the time, it's an unvarnished truth of how those things were at the time. And it's just really to show people that I'm not a special person, right? I'm just another person, just like everyone else is. And that if I could go through all of those things, then you too can go through your challenges and come out the other end with that growth that you're looking for. And, it's supposed to be inspirational, motivational. I share some of the key lessons, mentioned one or two of them here, but also the other things that I found helpful really to help myself with everything. And yeah, it's just kind of like, it's basically well, it's kind of like a podcast interview that I might do like this, but just a lot more detailed and, in a book form. And, kind of you really get a much better sense of everything than than just a short podcast sort of thing.
So, Annie, just looking at some of the concepts that you coach people through, really, just one of the biggest ones, and something I have to, and indeed yourself, has to overcome is this sense of imposter syndrome, and looking at continually kind of confronting it, overcoming it, squashing it, but also just interacting with the self-sabotaging mindset of mental self-doubt. Could you maybe speak to what strategies you employ and indeed advocate for others to overcome this sense of fundamental imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. Imposter syndrome is experienced by so many people, and I find that whenever you begin to level up to the next level, imposter syndrome comes back again. So I noticed it in myself recently as well when I started to meet lots of interesting, famous people who were helping me with various different things, and a tad of imposter syndrome started to come back. And so what I did with myself in that scenario was I had a word with myself, and I was like, okay, Annie, you've already been on one of the world's most famous TV chat shows, the Oprah Winfrey Show. She was the number one chat show host in her time, and that was just for surviving a tsunami and organizing a relief effort. Okay, it's a big deal. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but it's not what I've done with it now, right? So then I was having a word with myself. These are the kind of, this is the judge, the kind of the inner critic that we have of that starts to compare you and starts to comparisonitis, for example, is my word for it. And I say it's completely useless. You cannot compare yourself to anyone else because we're all 100% unique in our own strengths, in our own abilities, in our own gifts. No one else is going to have the same superpowers that I do, and no one else is going to have the same superpowers that you do. And we've all got our own superpowers. So I had a word with myself, called myself up on these things, and just said, it's normal for that kind of survival part of our brain, that kind of saboteur-led brain, to get that fear every time, that you get a promotion or you have a new opportunity that's taking you to the next level. It's normal. It's part of it's trying to protect you from harm, but it's not there for your best life. So you need to, and this is what I was doing was I was like, okay, just because you think it doesn't make it true. So you just let that thought go. You don't give it any more airtime. You don't give it any more energy. You just say, okay, that's fine. I understand that, that a part of me is feeling scared about this change, that's feeling that imposter syndrome. It's normal to feel that. You bring yourself compassion and empathy and kindness and love and accept the things as they are. Let that thought go, because just because you think it doesn't make it true. And you just kind of keep on focusing on that. You keep allowing that thought and that feeling to come, but not giving it any of that airtime. And what I call is the ABCs. Is this thought accurate? Is it balanced? And is it complete? And that's why I was having that conversation with myself. You've already been on the Oprah Winfrey Show. If you get on other things, then that's brilliant and fantastic, but there's nothing to feel like you're an imposter about, you know. And that was like a couple of weeks after the tsunami when I still had PTSD, and I was like totally freaked out. So if I had managed to do that then and I survived that, then of course I can manage to do everything else. And this is kind of what, I help my clients with as well, with their kind of imposter syndrome as well.
So Annie, let's go there actually, and let's look at your clients because I really want to examine the tools you foster and employ to get the best out of CEOs. So something you just said there was really interesting around somatic intelligence and listening to your body. but not necessarily letting your body dictate your performance, your actions, or indeed your mindset. So I'm a big advocate of gut feeling, doing a whole body scan, listening to your body. Where are you at? What is the self-talk? Is it negative? Because actually you probably need to change the narrative in your mind and actively work towards changing the narrative. And just it's that somatic check-in that about listening to yourself, but then dictating where you're going to go rather than letting your body influence that. So that's one aspect which you've just explored nicely. Could you maybe speak to a few more that you advocate for CEOs to sort of get the best out of them?
Well, I mean, as you said, the somatic thing, it's about really bringing the thoughts that are going on in the unconscious into the conscious. Okay, so most of that our fears are not necessarily in the body, they're in the mind. Okay, so they start off in the mind as a thought, and then they trigger a feeling and an emotion in the body. And if you can access, if it does go into the body and you can access that feeling and an emotion and just sit with it, right, rather than avoid it or distract yourself from it, then it will naturally pass away of its own accord. Often things hang around because we don't allow ourselves to feel the feels. We don't want to sit in pain. We don't want to sit in discomfort. We want to um, play a video game, or watch the TV, or scroll on Insta, or do anything but have to, sit with the things. So, but the majority of mental fitness comes from understanding what your internal dialogue is, because I don't know, we have up to 100,000 thoughts a day, some of the research says. But most of those thoughts are running in the unconscious and in the kind of automatic programming. So until you bring that into the conscious, it's going to drive your life and you're going to call it fate. That's what Carl Jung says. So that really resonates with me because it's so true. If you don't know what your automatic beliefs and core beliefs are, and your thoughts that are running around in the background are, they are actually dictating how you are experiencing life. So when you start to really harness that power of your mind and the thoughts, and you, like I said, you choose the thoughts that you are going to give airtime to, you let the ones that are no good just fall away. And the main thing that I do with a lot of my clients is, I get them back into the present moment, because the thing is, thinking is usually a product of something from the past, where you're thinking about, oh no, why did I say that, or what did I do then, or why did I do that, kind of thing, or you're worrying about the future. But when you ground into this moment, if I say to any of my clients who maybe are going through massive challenges at the time, I say, right in this moment, how are you? Like, just physically, how are you? They're all fine. Okay. So it's just the kind of like mental machinations of our brain that kind of make us not okay in this moment. Very few people are suffering in reality in this moment. It's just a product of the mind. So you've got to control that mind through the mental fitness work that I do. And that is really one of the cornerstones of the way that I work. Mental fitness, mindfulness, sort of mental fitness repetitions. I liken it to how the doctor says we need to do 30 minutes of moderate exercise a day to be physically well. We need to do 15 to 20 minutes worth of mental fitness exercises a day to be mentally and emotionally well. And being mentally and emotionally well, being mentally fit, will help you live 10 years longer than your counterparts. And I actually think it's more important than your physical fitness as well.
So that's powerful, Annie, for a number of reasons. But you speak to this mental fitness being absolutely necessary, this body-mind connection. And a facet of that really is this neuroplasticity and how individuals can shift their neural pathways and rewire their mindsets. Because we have these, to your earlier work, these almost neural motorways that don't necessarily benefit us. Self-doubt, negativity, poor self-belief. That almost, if we give energy to, become motorways, become almost these freeways that the neural default. Could you maybe speak to changing the neuroplasticity or indeed these neural pathways to rewire them for success and indeed self-belief?
Absolutely. So this is my one of my favorite topics now that we're on. So with with mental fitness and neuroplasticity, what we first of all, what is important for people to understand is that we have a natural negativity bias. So our brain has evolved to remember the negative experiences in our life, to remember the painful experiences in our life, and to over-index on those painful experiences more so than the positive experiences in life. Now, this is part of our evolution. Our ancestors needed to know which was the poisonous snake more than they needed to know which was the pretty butterfly. So it's evolved as a way of keeping us alive. However, that negativity bias, and that's why most people will err on the side of being slightly moany, slightly complaining, slightly not very happy with everything, and index on the one thing that's gone wrong in their week rather than all of the things that we take for granted every day. Like we all wake up, we've all got water, running water, hot electricity, we've all got our basic kind of survival needs met. But that one thing, that one presentation that didn't go quite right, or that one car journey that didn't go right, or the one day that the trains are late is the thing that we'll tend to focus on. So that's everybody's got that. Okay. Everybody's got that negativity bias kind of installed within them. So what we can do to shift from that sort of negativity bias, from that survival brain function, we've got two main hemispheres of the brain, which we can, just for the sake of ease, call them the surviving and the thriving parts of our brain. And what you can do is you can change the way that your neural pathways actually fire. So let's say, for example, we're all firing into our negativity kind of bias into the survival brain more so. What we can do is we can interrupt that pattern and we can create new neural pathways. Now, one of the most effective methods of doing that is through meditation exercises, through mindfulness exercises, or mental fitness repetitions, which you just do to refocus yourself into the present moment regularly throughout the day. Now, I actually advocate doing a couple of minutes regularly throughout the day rather than doing an hour in the morning and then nothing else. Because what happens is that we sort of charge up into our thriving part of the brain when we do these activities. But as the day progresses, then we kind of go dip back down into the survival brain. So if you continuously charge up through the day, we're talking 2 to 5 minutes every hour or every other hour. So when you go to get your glass of water, for example, or all these kind of things, or go to the bathroom and have a bathroom break, you're just integrating it through your day. A lot of my CEOs that do not have time to sit on a mat for an hour. So I show them tools and techniques that they can use within their day, even within meetings, that they can integrate so that they can work on their mental fitness. And it has amazing results as well.
I can imagine actually, and just actually, like you said, it's about integration and it's about resetting. Well, it's not necessarily resetting the day, but looking at actively pursuing mental practices which set the day rather than, like you said, it's really interesting. You talk about this negativity bias and actually left to our own munitions, I think, and a lack of cognitive awareness that pulls forward almost a self-fulfilling prophecy actually. And actually, but and what you're advocating, Annie, and I really believe in this, is pulling the reins in on some of these fundamental biases, negative biases, which occur in our minds, so that actually we start to dictate and fall forward rather than fall backwards into these biases, which I absolutely agree with. But looking at the one of the things that really comes through in your work, Annie, is around these life-threatening situations you've experienced and dealing with some of the day-to-day trauma and bringing people through what has been for you very traumatic experiences. Could you maybe speak to maybe your anecdotal experience of with people listening to this that might be, so 1 in 2 people will be affected by cancer in their lifetime. It's just such a prolific and horrendous disease, as you can speak to. Could you maybe speak to people that are either experiencing a cancer journey or have a person that's been touched by cancer within their family and are going through these trials and tribulations? Is there any are there any tools within resilience and or purpose and or guiding principles that you could speak to for people going through this horrendous journey?
I would say look at everything. Okay. Don't just do the treatments and hope that that's going to get you through it. Have a look at what is the message of that cancer coming to you? What's happening in your mind, in your body, in your spirit? Are you in alignment? And if you are not in alignment, then how can you work on yourself to heal not just the physical symptoms of cancer, but potentially, what may have created it in the first place? I do believe that we can create our own reality, but I don't mean that in a way that is I don't mean that in a way that, I'm blaming people for their diagnosis, but certainly for myself, I feel that my mindset in the past, that depression that I had of not really wanting to be here, of having thoughts that were kind of negative a lot of the time, it didn't, although I was shocked by the diagnosis, there was a part of me that wasn't really shocked because it was like, well, if you kind of like think about not really wanting to be here so much of the time, then what's your body going to create? Yeah. So it was kind of like a physical manifestation of my mental sort of state, I felt like. So I encourage people to really look at all of those aspects that are going on for them and to, are you in the wrong relationship? Are you a people pleaser that isn't able to say no? Are you really highly self-critical of yourself and or others? And how is that impacting your sort of cellular biology? So really look at all of the different aspects and also remember that even a stage 4 diagnosis is no longer a death sentence. People get scared about this, the C word. And I want people to know I don't see it as anything other than something that came to me as a lesson for me to guide me to where I am today. And that having learnt those lessons and changed the way that I was living my life, that, if it kind of comes back again, which it hasn't, as I said, for the last 10 years, then I'll deal with that. But I feel that because I'm now happy and I am, doing something that brings me a lot of joy, I have purpose in life, I have meaning in life, I have my mission to impact the lives of over 250,000 people, and that's in honor of the same number of people that died in the tsunami. But genuinely, if I did die tomorrow, I would die happy because I feel like I have achieved the things I wanted to achieve. Obviously, I need to get my book out first and get that 250,000 through, but I feel like I have lived that life. And what you want to do is you want to look at your life. And this is one of my favorite questions to ask my clients is when you're 80 years old, looking back at your life, what would you feel and think about either this situation or B, your life in general? Now, if you're the kind of person that can look back at your life now and say, I've had a really amazing life and, well, that's great. But if you're not, then do something about that. Live your best life now. And I think a lot of us are not living our best lives. A lot of us are going along with that kind of like the 9 to 5 job and we're sort of like automated sometimes, we're existing, but we're not truly living. And so if those things are happening for you, these are just messages from your body to say, please listen to me. Please look at me. Please pay attention to me. And if you can take it in that way, and you can take, so many people go into remissions without, doing treatments or, there's a book with Dying to Be Me by Anita Moorjani. I think she dies and then comes back and all the cancer disappears once she comes back. So there are miracles going on all of the time. And you also can create those miracles because we are all one. we're all the same. So what happens to one person, you can make that happen as well. So I just want people to know you've got a lot more power than you think you have. So don't devolve your power to, empower yourself and, take some ownership of the things that are there, and, take hope in that, whatever you want to happen can actually happen. So you need to start believing it, put those practices into play, get support, become mentally fit, work on all these aspects, and you could really surprise yourself.
Yeah. So listen, a couple of things before we come into land, Annie, and a couple of questions. And just one of the central themes, and you've just spoken to this actually, around self-care and this interplay of self-care and discipline, really, because as you were saying before about mentally resetting the day and taking hold of these negative heuristics and biases, but also taking hold of the positive attitude and positive energy, and indeed others' testimony. And that is a discipline approach, not just wandering, as many of us do, including me, sometimes sleepwalk through the day and wonder why you're feeling completely destitute and tired by the end of the day. Taking hold of your day and of your week um, before it takes hold of you, to really mentally rewire your day. Now, I guess my question in all this is, what attributes of self-discipline and therefore self-care could you speak to? Because I think self-care is fundamental throughout all your work, but it is a disciplined approach. Could you speak to those main two attributes before maybe a final question?
Sure. So with a self-care, if you don't care for yourself, okay, and then of course these things are going to happen. You have to kind of like pay attention. As I said, you've got to listen to your body, you've got to listen to yourself, and you've got to take note of that, and you've got to care for yourself. One of the key points of my blueprint is, the first step of my ultimate results group blueprint is to create awareness of your saboteurs, the self-sabotaging thoughts that you've got, those limiting beliefs that you have, as well as your strengths and your gifts and your abilities. The second stage is really moving into a place of unconditional love and acceptance and forgiveness for being an imperfect human being. Okay, because we're all imperfect, we're all going to make mistakes, but you have to bring that love and that compassion to yourself. Then you start to understand who you truly are, not who you think you are. And then you start to work on getting alignment between your mind, your body, and your soul. And that means really working on that mindset, really working on listening to your body and not pushing yourself, and really kind of like, it's the push-pull energy, as I call it. The saboteurs are your pushing energy, and the inspiration is your pulling energy. There's a lovely quote, which is, don't be pushed by the fears in your mind, be pulled by the dreams in your heart. And I think that's a lovely way of thinking about it. And then the final stage is, once you get into a place of ease and flow, you are then in a perfect opportunity to manifest everything that you want to you. But most of us focus on what we don't want, we don't focus on what we do want. But you are creating your reality every day by the thoughts, by the emotions that you're choosing to give energy to. So I think it's an incredibly empowering thing to think that we can create our own realities, and so therefore you can create your own healing as well. So that's what I would say with regards to that. If that
That's powerful, Annie. That's powerful. And again, that comes back to is this positive mental attitude in everything you're going into, but just looking at rewriting, as you said earlier, the internal dialogue. I think from start to finish, and then actually what you'll find over time is the neuroplasticity, the actual default mode will be a positive one, actually, rather than this mental degradation or negativity. And I think just rewriting constantly those internal scripts is a powerful one. And as we're coming to land, mindful of time, just could I just get you to speak to a few take-home messages just to leave for listeners, just from not only just from the conversation, but from your work, which is both powerful and indeed seminal, because you do have your memoirs just about to be released. Could you maybe just speak to some take-home messages for listeners and viewers?
Yeah, well, I'd like to just ask your listeners, what if in your darkest hour you find your greatest strength, and how you can reframe your experience of life so that instead of feeling victimized by it, or instead of feeling overwhelmed by it, you think to yourself, how is this a gift for me? What do I need to learn? What do I need to grow from this experience? Do I need more resilience? Do I need more patience? Do I need more love? Do I need more compassion? Do I need more forgiveness? You've got to remember that I believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Our soul comes here to remember who we truly are, that we're already beautiful, wonderful spirits and souls, divine beings. So just think to yourself, how is this helping me to that goal? What is it my soul has chosen to learn here, to grow from this, and to not feel overwhelmed by those experiences. Get the support where you need it. Call me, call someone else, but get the support when you need it. Don't go it alone. We all need support, and coaching can be an incredibly uplifting and inspirational kind of journey and transformative journey. It has been for all of my clients. It has been for myself. And wouldn't you want to live your best life? If we are only living one life, wouldn't you want it to be your best life? Wouldn't you want to have your dream job, earn your dream money, travel to the places that you want to? So just go ahead and do it. And don't let those fears, those saboteurs stop you and get in the way. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Annie, that's powerful. That's powerful. And this is what we'll do in the show notes is we'll signpost both to your website and indeed to upcoming memoirs, so people can really just tap into the deeper knowledge and indeed deeper concepts within your work, which are equally as powerful. So, but just want to thank you for the past 45 minutes. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Owen, for having me on. It's been a pleasure.